Back again to talk a little bit about how to set goals and all the things that are associated with that. Truthfully, when you first start talking about setting goals, it probably behooves everyone to really come up with an understanding that there are a lot of different types of goals. Outcome goals are exactly what they sound like. You're focusing on the end result, whereas performance goals are focusing more on the means by which you're achieving something. And process goals, it's not just, it's kind of diving into the performance goal. And it's starting to really focus on a very, very myopic aspect of whatever the larger process is that either the individual athlete or the larger team or whatever can be a part of with regards to success. One of the things that we do know is that setting goals does not necessarily mean it's going to be effective. It has to be done in a certain way. And if you use primarily outcome goals, we know that your chance for effectiveness is going to be greatly decreased. And this is something that research has supported, but also common sense and just years and years of practitioner experience. Is that whether you're an athlete or whether you're a middle level manager in an organization or an individual who's trying to achieve some physical fitness goals or anything like that, the process is universal. The content is always going to change based upon your environment and your situation. But one thing consistent in all of these types of environments is that if you really do focus primarily on the outcome, then the rate of burnout and success is the burnout rate is going to be high and your success level is going to be extremely low. So, why is using this organized process so effective? And it's primarily because of those four things there that we'll talk about in isolation on each one of them. One is that when you say I want to be in better health, that's pretty broad. Okay, that's pretty broad, and so it doesn't allow you the directed attention that you need to focus on how to achieve certain things. Working with goals is kind of like a train that has all these different cars that are connected together. Okay, and so one breakdown in one train car is going to influence the breakdown in the other train cars, and then eventually you have this individualistic problem becomes a systemic issue. All right, and so if you have, if you have a clear understanding of how goal setting works and relates, then you realize that you have to funnel down. Remember, we talked about how the human mind, it can only process so many bits of information. You have to funnel it down, and that's what directed attention is talking about, funneling everything down. It's not just that you want to be in better health, and it's not just that I want to lose 50 pounds or that we want to be a better organization than we were last year. It's just not clear. Okay, and so if you have a very specific goal, directed attention, then your chance of achieving that goal is going to be much greater. Effort mobilization. Once you have attention directed on one particular thing, then you can put forth your effort, or you can mobilize what we call resources, whether that's the mind of the individual. If you're an organization, effort mobilization may require a couple of different departments. If you're talking about an athletic department, you might have the PR and marketing departments working together in conjunction with the ticketing office, in conjunction with the development folks. All right, you can mobilize all those different resources, which are going to manifest themselves in both individual and collective effort. Once you have all those things going together, you need to help develop persistence. You need to help develop that dogged determination that you need to have to accomplish certain goals. Okay, and that being able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, either as an individual or again as a collectivity, and be able to face adversity, deal with failure. And we talked about causal attribution in the first section and all this kind of stuff. That's how it relates to the goal setting process. And you as a leader, how are you going to, if you have a setback, the leader needs to stand up and make sure that the entire group is still on board with mobilizing all the resources and staying persistent on what it is that they're trying to do. And then finally, it kind of works out well that, if you're constantly learning, there's this idea within transformational leadership, which is one of the preferred forms of leadership within intercollegiate athletics, for example. It's called intellectual stimulation. And so the idea that you're learning different ways of not only setting goals, but identifying goals and allocating resources and motivating individuals. It keeps things from, the more that you learn as a leader, for example, the better that you are going to be, but also your group. And that group then has the opportunity to succeed as individuals within that group. And so anytime you can learn something new that's going to be a positive, that's going to be very, very effective with regards to not only setting, but also achieving goals. Just some principles, and obviously you're big boys and girls, so you can read these. They're very, very commonsensical, and hopefully I tried to use some language that was just very straightforward, but it's about looking at balancing the short term and the long term. It's about understanding that you don't just set a goal, you set multiple goals. And these goals, some should be more difficult than others. Some should focus on the individual, others should focus on the team. And you can't just expect people, just because you set goals, that they're going to necessarily know how to achieve them. And goals are going to change based upon the situation. If you're talking about as a coach, for example, and you have goals for practice or for a film session, and then you have goals that are going to be set and achieved, hopefully achieved, in the actual arena of competition. And then you're balancing and understanding your people. And that last one, consider personality and individual differences. That's going to be huge. I'm not saying it should be the overriding factor, but it needs to be taken into consideration. Some people are motivated in different ways. Some people can be screamed at, and that is a huge motivator. Others, you do that, and they go right into the tank, and you lose them. Okay, and so it's about trying to know your group, know yourself. And so when we talk about self-reflexivity with regards to leadership, or just within sport and exercise psychology, or what it is that you all are going to be doing within the kind of sport business environment, it's about knowing the people. You are a part of the quote-unquote people, and then the individuals that you work with. You need to know your organization from top to bottom. And that's why even something like the Oklahoma City Thunder, the players and the administrative side, in terms of deal with the fans and that type of thing, they don't interact very often. A lot of people assume, I'm going to go work for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and if you're in season ticket sales and you're a retention specialist, you're going to get to see the players and interact with them. And just, no. The player personnel and the rest of the business part of the organization generally don't interact. However, the general manager says, okay, maybe that's not a great way to do that, so we want to slowly integrate the players, the administrative staff, the volunteers, the people that work at the arena, get to know each other. And maybe not on the most in-depth level, but at least you're starting to recognize and understand all facets of your organization. That's usually a good example. Goals should be SMART. the SMART principle: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. This SMART goal system is something that is used in most every HR department in the United States. Just even here, local at the university, our HR department uses it. Oftentimes when quarterly evaluations are made for coaches, for example, and the athletic director sits down with coaches, this is the goal setting process that they use. If you put together different business plans, and you maybe have an entrepreneurial spirit and you want to start your own high performance training center or something, oftentimes when you're working with the small business development people, they're going to say, what are your goals? And this is going to be the system that they use to framework an understanding of what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, and when do you want to achieve it. Your goals, as we've talked about before, they do need to be specific. To say, I want to be a better person, that's amorphous, that's too large. The chances of achieving that goal are slim to nil. And if you say, I want to lose, I want to be in better health and I want to lose weight, well, how are you going to measure losing weight? 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 5 pounds? If you want to talk about how I feel in my clothes, or if you want to talk about, I'm going to do a 10K running program because I've done some 5Ks, but I want to measure my, cardiovascular, my VO2 max, whatever, okay? How attainable is it to say, okay, I'm going to stop smoking tomorrow? That's probably not really very realistic. Also, it needs to be relevant. It needs to be something that's important to you. And if it's not, then you're just the SMAT part of it. It's probably not going to, it's not going to resonate with you on a humanistic level. And then it needs to be time bound. If you say, for the rest of my life, I want to make sure that I'm in better shape. For the rest of your life, what? This better shape? I mean, there's so many problems with that goal setting statement that where you begin. But you need to put time parameters. The human mind likes parameters, it likes structure. If you say, by this time I'm going to do this and this, then you can really evaluate whether that was something that you were able to accomplish or you did not accomplish. Now, just because you didn't accomplish it doesn't mean that you're a complete and utter failure and you shouldn't try again. But you need to, this is the whole process of self-reflexivity, is that you have to go back and keep looking at these things, monitoring different types of progress on these goals. Well, it's very easy in terms of understanding the process, understanding the different aspects of goals. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more complicated than sometimes people think, but once you dive into it, it's really not bad. But here are some of the common pitfalls, if you will, some of the places where people tend to come up a little short. One, as we've talked about sort of implicitly in all the examples, poorly written statements. Maybe these things don't adhere to the SMART goal setting process system or some of the other things. Or maybe you have the good goals, you have them in, you know that they're not just outcome goals, maybe they're going to be a mixture of performance and process goals, and you've set all this stuff and you've got a time, but you didn't really set out exactly how you're going to accomplish it. What are the mechanisms, if you will? So if you say, I'm going to talk about trying to drop 10 pounds, and you have a time frame, and it's very, very realistic, and it's something that's very important to you, but you don't say, I'm going to do this by, working out 3 nights a week at home, or I'm going to join a gym and get a workout buddy that's going to help me to go to the gym 4 times a week, or, something like that. Or maybe you put that together and you're like, well, I said 4 times a week, and 4 times a week, honestly, is it's a little vague. You might want to pick days. And so let's say I'm going to go on a Monday, a Wednesday, a Friday, and a Sunday. And that means Sunday and Monday you're doing it back to back, or whatever it is that you're doing. And so maybe on Monday you have a bad day and you're like, I just don't feel like working out. I'll just pick it up tomorrow. Okay, well, you've already deviated from your strategy. Not saying you're necessarily going to fail, but once you start deviating from that strategy, then the chances of being successful are greatly diminished. Also, another failure to monitor the performance progress is that, however you're going to do that, and most exercise psychologists and personal trainers, anytime you're doing something like health-related goals, they say try not to go with a number on a scale. All right, because it's very, very easy to be in poor health but still reach numbers on a scale and that kind of thing. So you need to have some sort of milestones where you can be honest about, okay, this is how I'm monitoring my progress. I feel good about it. That's one of the things when people talk about diet and changing how they eat and stuff. The MyFitnessPal and all the different apps. I'm not saying they're perfect, but what they do is provide you a way to monitor progress. It's a very, very easy to follow and understand strategy, and that if it's easier and it makes sense and you're not frustrated all the time, then your likelihood of success is going to be much higher. And then finally, discouragement. You see this a lot with youth sports and burnout, things like that. Is maybe there's too many outcome goals, or maybe it's just too complicated. Maybe there's just too many goals in general. You've got practice goals, you've got competition goals, you've got performance goals, you have process goals. And that's going to be one of the things as a coach or a leader or something like that, is knowing when to say when with regards to dropping all of this on individuals within your organization. And finally, just a few words. We've talked a lot about when you're dealing with people, and I just want to take one moment to talk a little bit about kind of the ethics of all these different things, and sort of the ethics of leadership and the ethics of setting goals and trying to balance what's best for people, even if maybe they don't necessarily see it at that moment. And so you have just 6 basic principles in sports psychology, sport and exercise psychology, with regards to ethical behavior, and they really are associated with setting goals and motivating people and that type of thing. And one is the first 2, if you're talking about competence and integrity, and it's being it's someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's not out of like we've talked about before, out of their depth. We talked about depression. If you're not a psychologist, you probably shouldn't be diagnosing people All right, that shows if you're going and sort of presenting yourself as competent in that regard, or presenting yourself on an expert or things like that. Well, that's just lying, lack of integrity, and truly it sets you, the person you're dealing with, and the organization up for failure. And it's just not demonstrating good professional and personal responsibility in that situation. Principle 4 is kind of interesting. It's super commonsensical, but just respect for people and their dignity, and then being concerned with their welfare. You know, the whole point of being in a leadership role is to help individuals achieve a goal. And that individual, once they're starting to achieve a goal, then the collectivity can start to move forward, and that's what transformational leadership is about. And ultimately, especially here when we're dealing with sport organizations or physical activity environments, oftentimes we deal with communities, and we deal with health, and we deal with understanding people, not just as individuals, but people as part of some larger group. And that social responsibility of, I have a responsibility to you as an individual. If you kind of want to go back to philosophy and the social contract and all that kind of stuff, the social contract thinkers of the Reformation period and that type of thing, is that you have a responsibility to other people in your community, in your society, to be a good person and to try and help your community and help other communities. And that's one of the things, I don't want to go too much, in terms of talking about this, but when you're working in sport, recreation, and physical activity-based organizations, oftentimes communities look to us to set the standard. Other business-based organizations look to us to set the standard with regards to leadership and teamwork and having a positive relationship with a variety of different communities. And all that stuff kind of goes into social responsibility. It's very important. Many of you already know this, and that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride in, is most of our students that come through the program tend to have an intuitive understanding of these things. But it's very good to sit down and talk about these things every once in a while.